Good evening. Hello. I'm Dan Haggerty. Welcome to The Story. This is day 39 of this whole isolation situation. I feel like we're really getting to know each other, don't you? Which is hard to believe since the story is like only 3 months old, which I can't believe. But thanks to coronavirus, it feels like we've been doing this for decades. Look, if you're one of the new viewers, we get a couple every single night. I want to give you a little rundown on how this whole thing works. We're like the news, but different. We want you to weigh in. We want you to talk to us, ask us questions, leave comments, stuff like that. We have a crack team watching my Facebook page and Instagram, our email, and Twitter. Just use the hashtag HeyDan so we can find you real easily. So say hello, and I'll get to work. Now, I want to start tonight by talking about booze. No, not because it's Thirsty Thursday or because we're really close to the weekend or because I've had a rough day. No, I want to talk about the OLCC and Oregon's relatively unique hold on liquor sales across the state. Now, I don't need to tell you that restaurants and bars, they are hurting and hurting really, really badly right now. Yeah, they are able to make some money thanks to deliveries and to-go orders, and a lot of them have loyal customers, but that is not enough. I mean, not even close. And there is one big reason why. And that leads us to tonight's quote of the day from the co-owner of Kachka, Israel Morales. He told the Oregonian about the shirts that they have that say, "Vodka pays the bills." Listen, on a good day, restaurants operate under pretty thin profit margins, but cocktails are the moneymaker. If you've ever paid $12 for a drink, you know what I'm talking about. But unlike our neighbors to the north and south and to the east, Oregon restaurants and bars are trying to survive without their most valuable product. See, in California, you can buy a mixed drink to go as long as you're getting it with some food. Some businesses in Idaho are selling pre-made to-go cocktails. And while Washington, they don't sell pre-made drinks to go, restaurants can sell you liquor to go as long as it's still in the factory sealed container, but not Oregon though, because Oregon state law lays out very clearly what is allowed, or rather what isn't. The OLCC's rule book for businesses says Oregon law allows the sale, service, and or drinking of alcoholic beverages on the licensed premises from 7 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. on the succeeding day. And it's that last part, on premises part, that's really the rub for these companies. And there are a couple of exceptions. All right, the OLCC recently let distilleries start selling their spirits online and over the phone. And just last week, restaurants and bars could suspend their liquor liability insurance and hold off on paying to renew their annual license, which totally makes sense. Why pay for a license you literally cannot use right now? But until restaurants and bars can sell liquor again, they're going to keep hurting and hurting badly. The OLCC spokesperson we talked to the Oregonian told them that they think the law could be changed by a special session. That is, if Oregon leaders ever decide to hold a special session. And if they do, you bet we'll tell you about it. All right. Let's talk about our big story and the big election coming up next month, specifically one race that hopefully you are paying attention to. It's the race for Secretary of State. Now, in Oregon especially, it's one of the most important roles in government, but it's also one of those positions that it kind of gets you to say, like, what exactly do they do? And it's times like these, I'm glad we know Pat Doris.
Oregon's very first Secretary of State was elected way back in 1841, before Oregon officially became a state, and before the job was even called Secretary of State. But there was a need, even back then. The modern office is held by Bev Clarno, a Republican in her 80s, appointed to fill the job after the death of fellow Republican Dennis Richardson. He died of brain cancer in February of 2019.
Secretary was a leader. He had a vision for the agency to serve the people of Oregon with all of our hearts.
Clarno is not running for election, but told me recently she is trying to help other states who want to copy our vote-by-mail system during this pandemic.
We'll do all we can to help, and the state of Washington will as well. I know we're in constant contact with them.
The technical part of the job includes elections, no small task in this age of cyber attacks and coronavirus, along with auditing public agencies, keeping public records, and helping manage state lands. The Secretary has professional directors who lead most of those areas.
The Senate will please come to order.
On the political side, Secretary of State has been a major launching pad since the 1950s. In 1957, Mark Hatfield won election to the job, then quit 2 years later to become governor and later U.S. Senator. In 1965, Tom McCall won the office, then resigned 2 years later to become governor.
We meet today in the face of great challenge and unrivaled opportunity.
In 1985, Barbara Roberts won the post, was re-elected in 88, and then resigned in 91 to become the governor. See a pattern here? Oh, and since Oregon does not have a lieutenant governor, the Secretary of State is also next in line if the governor, for some reason, cannot do the job.
And I will faithfully discharge
the duties of governor.
the duties of governor.
And that is how Kate Brown ended up taking the oath of office for governor in February of 2015. She had been elected Secretary of State in 2009 and 2012, and when Governor John Kitzhaber resigned, she was ready to step in.
We must strengthen Oregon ethics laws to ensure transparency and accountability.
So there you go, Secretary of State for Oregon. It might be a job you've never heard of, but the political leaders certainly have for a number of reasons.
Okay, Pat Doris joining us now. So it's pretty clear, Secretary of State, very important decision that Oregonians have to make. But how do they make that decision? What should we look for in a Secretary of State?
Well, I think you want somebody who's pretty well-rounded and who is generally a good person. I think that these candidates really are bringing out some of the best opportunities. They all have a lot of experience. Some want to focus on one part or another. But, from this position, you really learn at one of the highest levels of government how the entire thing works. And if you're going to go on and be governor, you're pulling the levers of the state operation a lot to help things run smoothly. Just ask Kate Brown. It's like drinking from a fire hose, she said several times when she took over for Kitzhaber. So I think it'll be interesting. It's got a goofy title, Secretary of State. Nobody knows what that means, but really it is a powerful position.
Now, the power of that position and how the person utilizes it, can that vary from person to person? I feel like there's a lot of versatility in what the Secretary of State does.
Absolutely. If they want to be a hard-charging auditor, they have the power to do that, and they can very publicly shame and spank agencies that are not doing things right. If, on the other hand, they want to be a forward thinker and a leader in elections, they can definitely do that. If they want to really get involved in how the state lands are managed and whether they're profitable or whether they're held for the environment, they can lean into that. I think it's hard for one person to do all three things really well. So that's kind of one of the areas that you're going to want to look for is what do you want them to be doing?
Good stuff. Pat Doris, thank you.
You betcha.
Now, while we're talking about elections, just a quick reminder for you to check your mailbox because your ballot might be sitting in there. They started getting sent out yesterday, and I just want to take a moment once again to savor the fact that we do have mail-in voting here in Oregon. Otherwise, we'd have to do this. Yeah, you remember this. This is all the people lined up at the polls for Wisconsin's primary earlier this month, and so far, more than 50 people who either voted or people there working at the polls have tested positive for coronavirus. So let's all be thankful that we can vote from the safety of our couch or, wherever you like to sit. Some people are big chair guys. Oregon's primary, though, a reminder, May 19th, so be sure to mail your ballot before then. And one thing that there is new this year, you don't have to put a stamp on it. You just put it right in the mailbox and off it goes. Now, if you have a Beaverton address, this is a pretty substantial election. We got into this a little bit during last night's show, but I think it deserves a little bit more of more attention. We told you about the editorial in the Beaverton Valley Times. Now, the editorial board wants the city to slow its roll on changing the city charter in this May election because the mayor is also up for election. Now, if you're like us, you're not really caught up on all the granular details of Beaverton city government. Here you go. Beaverton, turns out, is the only city in Oregon with a strong mayor form of government. And that means that Mayor Denny Doyle is effectively the city's chief executive. So he prepares the budget, he hires and fires department heads, but he can't vote, not unless it's to break a tie on council. But next election, Beaverton voters may vote to change their city's charter, and that strips the mayor of some of that power, and they'll be hiring a city manager instead to take on those chief executive duties. Now, in exchange for that power, the mayor would get the ability to then vote on city council. Now, Beaverton's form of government is unique compared to all the other cities in Oregon, but Portland's is unique compared to every other major city in the country. But some pretty powerful people think it might be time for Portland to assimilate. In May of 1913, Portlanders voted, and our commission form of government was formed. Today, 107 years later, it still stands, alone. And for the 112 of you who move to Oregon every day, you might need a little primer on how it all works. So, here we go. Portland City Commission is made up of the mayor, obviously, and 4 commissioners. Commissioner Nick Fish recently died, so we currently only have 3 sitting commissioners. Now, the first big difference comes in how each one of them is elected. The whole city gets a vote on each of the 5 positions. Compare that to a typical mayor-council style of government where the city is broken up into districts, and each district elects one person to represent them on city council. The second big difference is in how much power these commissioners have. In Portland, the mayor assigns each commissioner various bureaus to lead. For example, the mayor is technically the police commissioner, and Chloe Eudaly is in charge of the Bureau of Transportation. Oh yeah, Portland has bureaus instead of departments. Over the years, though, groups like the City Club of Portland have said that the commission style of government has failed us. They say having an entire city vote for one position leads to a lack of diversity in its leaders. For example, Joanne Hardesty is the first woman of color to sit on city council in more than 100 years. And Chloe Eudaly is the first known renter on council in a city full of renters. And this is actually the first time in Portland's history that city council has been made up of more women than men. They also say it doesn't make a lot of sense for leaders to lead departments they have no experience leading. Even Mayor Wheeler has said that he'd support changing our style of government if that's what people voted for. But Portland has voted down changing the government 5 times since 1950. So if you're part of the 112, I guess now you know why Portland's government is as weird as the city's reputation. Now, yesterday, our big story was all about the problematic culture inside Oregon's Capitol. Now, today, a representative accused of making offensive comments spoke at a hearing, both apologizing and defending himself. We're talking about Representative David Gomberg, a Democrat who represents the Central Coast. Now, the woman who complained about the comments says that they happened at an Oregon business and industry dinner in October. And according to a state investigation, the comments made her feel uncomfortable. It said, quote, Gomberg joked about a recent appointment with his urologist for a prostate condition and about being prescribed medication that would cause an erection. The unnamed accuser, who doesn't work for the state but works with lawmakers, told her boss about the comments, and her boss told House Speaker Tina Kotek, which led to this investigation. Now, at today's hearing, Representative Gomberg said that he made those comments during a conversation with the male lobbyist. He said he was relaying some health news that he'd gotten recently. He said he had a cancer scare but had learned that he does not have cancer. He then said that he needed medication, and one of the options is a drug used to treat erectile dysfunction. Basically, Representative Gomberg believes that that is what the woman overheard and then became uncomfortable. He said he felt bad about that, but he also said this.
I honestly do not believe that most people in a similar situation would conclude that I was sexualizing the conversation. So let's be very clear. I was speaking primarily to another man about my personal health. The conversation was about prostate cancer, not erections. I used medical language that you hear on television every day, and everything I said was factually true. Oh, and my wife was present during the entire thing. That's about it.
Representative Gomberg also critiqued the process the state uses to handle these kinds of complaints. He said it took way too long, 6 months. He said that the woman who made the complaint didn't want to go public, so her version went through several people and filters. And he said he wasn't informed of the actual accusations against him until months into the ordeal. Lawmakers put this process in place last year after all of those allegations of harassment inside the Capitol came to light. Bureau of Labor and Industries investigated and found substantial evidence of workplace harassment in Salem, as you probably remember, and the state ended up paying victims more than $1 million in settlement fees. They also made changes to better handle complaints and protect victims. At the end of today's hearing, the committee determined Gomberg's remarks did not amount to workplace or sexual harassment. They said there was insufficient evidence to prove that it did.
I never imagined that my government would see me as any less than any other American citizen.
Like many of us, she was expecting some stimulus cash from the government, but she got nothing because of who she was married to. And Portland spits in the face of mathematics to create a 6th quadrant. And hail to the chief for the day.
I like helping people.
When the story continues. So most people have gotten their federal stimulus checks by now, but some have not. And it turns out some never will. And it might be because of who they're married to. Here's Kyle Aboshi.
Kat Villegas found the love of her life in 2011. A year later, they married and eventually built a family together. But like a lot of Americans, the Vancouver woman found her life turned upside down by the coronavirus pandemic. She lost her job and hoped the federal stimulus check would help her family get by. But the money never arrived. Instead, the IRS denied payment.
I did not believe that it could be true. I never imagined that my government would see me as any less than any other American citizen.
A little-known provision in the coronavirus relief package denies stimulus checks to U.S. citizens married to undocumented immigrants. In Kat's case, she would have received $1,200 to help cover her bills and a $500 bonus for her son. Instead, they got nothing.
It's unacceptable to assume that my government would draw distinctions between which citizens have more value than others.
For Kat, it's especially painful because her husband is on a path to citizenship. He's got a work visa, a social security number, and a wife and child that are American citizens.
He's here, he works, he goes to college. He enjoys everything about the American life except for the American freedom of knowing our security for the future.
At least 2 federal lawsuits have been filed seeking an injunction blocking restrictions on stimulus payment. It's estimated nearly 1.2 million American citizens are married to undocumented immigrants. Many of them are families like Kat's, struggling to get by in this crisis with no help from the federal stimulus fund.
I'm an American citizen. My son is an American citizen, and we have no less value than anyone else who is.
Kyle Aboshi, KGW News.
Tomorrow, South Portland will officially be designated as the city's 6th sexton. Just don't call it that in front of Peabody, okay? Because they say it will still unofficially refer to each part of the city by quadrants because, you know, nothing matters anymore, not even numbers, apparently. Peabody says many Portlanders do prefer to call the city's address areas quadrants regardless of the total number. So in this spirit, Peabody will also informally recognize 6th quadrant as a designation for the new part of the city. So we have 6 quadrants. Got it. But I digress. South Portland is the area that runs between the Ross Island and Selwood bridges between the Willamette and Barber Boulevard. It's also by far from Portland's smallest quadrant. The reason the city redesignated this area as South Portland is to make the address system a little less confusing. A lot of the street numbers there, they start with 0, which a lot of people thought was optional or something, I guess. You know, who didn't think the 0 was optional? Firefighters who would end up going to the wrong address. So starting tomorrow, all those addresses will be able to drop the 0.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt Safino. So today I'm going to talk about something I posted on my Facebook page, but if you watch the news and watch our shows, you've probably seen it, and I'm talking about this massive light bulb. I did a Facebook post on this. You can go to my Facebook page and get it, but everybody wanted to know, what is it? Where did it come from? So what this is, and I'm going to talk about another object on my desk as well here. This is a massive light bulb from the days when television studios were lit with massive light bulbs like this. This is a 120 volt but 5,000 watt bulb. Now they're all LEDs, but this was lighting the KGW studios before HD TV, probably before color, back in the days of black and white with Richard Ross and Governor Tom McCall, who was a KGW news anchor back in the day, Doug Lemire, who did sports, and Jack Capel, who did weather. That's where that came from. It was sitting back in a storage room. Our chief engineer gave it to me. So in that Facebook post, I also asked people, in fact, let's look at these graphics here too. I asked people, what is this item on my desk? And this is something that I got at a different job that I used to have. So people guessed, what is this? Melford McCoy said, hey, I think the trapezoidal object on your desk, I think that is an ingot of iron. That's what Mel said. I think it is an iron ingot. Shirley Strope said, is it your first attempt at making banana bread? That's, I think, my favorite comment of all of them. Couple more for you. These are all comments on my Facebook page from people guessing what this trapezoidal object is. Brennan Petty saying, hey, is it some sort of ingot? Lead. Also love the bulb. Super cool. Love that. Thank you, Brendan, for that. Judy Nunn says, regarding the other item next to the light bulb, her husband says, is it a meteorite or a piece of a meteorite? No, Judy, it's not a piece of a meteorite. Grace Brito says, is it ash from Mount St. Helens? No, it's not that. But you know what? A couple people had the right answer. It's a copper ingot. David Butterfield got it right. Where did it come from? Well, back when I was in grad school at the University of Utah, I worked, well, not exactly there, but this is the Kennecott copper mine, and that's where this copper ingot came from. I did, however, work for the mine here at the smelter. That's a picture of the smelter with a lovely backdrop of the Wasatch Mountains there. And I worked there because of the smelter. They had to do air pollution monitoring, so they hired meteorological graduate students like myself to do that. It was an overnight job. It was actually awful, but it helped pay the grad school bills, right? So it was, this is what all I have left from that many, many years ago is this copper ingot. So that's where that came from. Dan, now you know the story of some of the random items on my desk. Back to you.
Lessons for you kids out there. The awful jobs will get you the good jobs. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. I know that everybody at home likes when we talk about the good news. I see the emails, and our photojournalist, John Goodwin, is really good at telling stories about good news. So he tagged along with a little boy in Hillsboro who was named Chief for a day.
Wednesday was an interesting day on Collier Way in Washington County.
Minor stuff. Well, they forewarned me as to what was going on.
For 11-year-old Danny Shaughnessy, it's one he'll remember for a long time.
I thought it was going to be a couple of police cars, and then I knew it was much more than a couple of police cars.
Heavy police presence is how you'd probably describe the scene outside his home. But it wasn't because of something he'd done. It's just because of who he is.
I like helping people.
Which is very true. He's like the world's greatest big brother. He's helpful around the house.
Hillsboro Police Chief Jim Coleman paid Danny a visit armed with some souvenirs, an official badge, and a promotion.
It's pretty amazing. I love seeing him smile and making him happy, and this certainly did that.
In front of family and friends, Danny was named Chief for a day.
I cried a little bit, a lot of it.
His mom, Jessica, enjoying a moment that took her mind off of what Danny is going through.
Daniel currently has medulloblastoma in his brain and spine, and it's one of the few that can spread to other parts of the body. Like Daniel's is all throughout his spinal cord.
Danny was first diagnosed with brain cancer when he was 7. He beat it, but then a couple years later, it came back.
It has been a very tough battle.
Standing strong in his driveway, what happened next, not even the new chief saw it coming. Law enforcement from the metro area, Junction City, even Eugene, put something together to let the boss know that they have his back.
He just keeps fighting and doing what he's got to do.
Thank you for your support, and I feel like I should say something else, but I don't know.
A special day for a chief, fit for a king.
See a tank in our future.
To honor a fighter.
Yeah, I might make you chief for a week. How about that?
John Goodwin, KGW News.
I told you he was good at those feel-good stories. Hey, we're going to read some comments after the break. Pick up your phone, use the hashtag HeyDan, send me an email. You know how to get a hold of us. And I said something on last night's show about taking your cats for a walk. I had no idea the reactions would come so quickly. We're keeping Portland weird. Next.
is.
You are like a pro. Look at you.
Whoa, she's really moving.
Yeah, you're doing awesome.
You are doing awesome. You're all doing awesome. We have the most amazing viewers on earth. Tonight, one of them is helping us to keep Portland weird by proving me right. Yesterday, I made a passing comment about seeing people actually out there walking their cats on a leash, and moments later, Monica Leiston Walker sends me this video of her walking her cat. This is Bella the Bengal. She's 6 months old. Monica tells me she loves to take walks. If you're out there keeping Portland weird, hey, prove it to us. Send us a photograph. Send us some video. We'll put it, as you can tell, we will put it on TV, even if it's a cat on a leash. All right, we're talking about some comments right here. Corey asked on Facebook, do we know what reasons were given for not changing our form of city government for the past 100 years? Well, I know that we modeled ours, at least from what we looked up, on Galveston, Texas, because they had that commission style way back 100 years ago. They actually changed theirs in 1960, so we haven't been modeling after them for very long after that. It's a big overhaul. It's a huge deal. A ton has to be done, and it's something that they are considering right now, so we'll talk about it. Then somebody writing in and saying, hey, Dan, enjoy the show, but I'm getting tired of you only talking about Portland. You have more viewers that live along the coast. What about the bottle drop story that I was talking about the other night, how there's no locations to drop off in Portland? Well, you can look that up on the Bottle Drop website. They'll tell you where all of the redemption centers are that are open right now. As far as grocery stores are concerned, grocery stores can collect bottles, but most of them, if not all of them, have chosen not to, because they want the only people going there to be the ones actually going to get groceries. Lastly, Catherine writing in and saying, Kyle Leboshi's story about an undocumented worker and a stimulus check, they said that he had a work visa. Only certain visas, those certain types of visas are getting that stimulus money, a very small percentage of them. So most people, even if they are here legally, if they're not legal citizens, they are not going to be getting that stimulus money. Look, I could do this all night. Keep them coming. #HeyDan. We do have a show tomorrow, so we'll pick it up then.